Hello, everybody, and welcome to Paradise Games Monday Night Modern. I am Alex, and I'll be bringing you 3 rounds of Modern tonight. It's going to be a pretty fun stream. Looks like we're starting things off with a little bit of Devastation Druid playing against Dredge. So, real quick here, I want to address the B&R that was released today. If you didn't catch the news, there were quite a few changes to Modern in particular, of course, you're seeing Modern here, in that Oko, Thief of Crowns, is now banned. Mox Opal is now banned. And those were 2 direct looks at that Urza Oko archetype, whether it be Simic, Sultai, Teamer, whatever version of Urza you wanted to play. Those 2 bans were certainly oriented directly at that archetype. And then a third ban, which a lot of people thought was a little out of left field, myself included, was a ban of Mycosynth Lattice, obviously a direct nerf to the Karn package. So anyways, those bans are not in effect currently, so all of those bans take effect as of tomorrow. So we will not see we could possibly, see some of those cards in our games here today. Of course, this does not necessarily mean that we will see any of those, as we look and see a Devoted Druid versus Dredge here. I don't think we're in any risk of seeing any Urza's Mox Opals or anything like that here. So just some nice, clean, good old-fashioned magic here. So let's take a look at the board state, see how things have progressed so far. We've got Dredge doing its best here with the Shriek Horn. Looks like Cathartic Reunion, Stinkweed Imp going into the graveyard. There's a Prized Amalgam. It's already been triggered, I do believe. Life from the Loam, the other discard there to the Cathartic Reunion. So we're going to see what Soren gets to turn over here. The Conflict Rate looks pretty good here, were it not for that Giver of Runes on Bryant's side of the field. That one looks very appealing as far as I'm concerned on his side, given the conflict rate. But he does need to find the combo and find it rather soon, as Soren is going to be putting a lot of power into play on this turn. So looks like we got all 4 Narcomoebas hitting the field. At the end of this turn, we'll see Prized Amalgams entering the battlefield as well. Luckily for Bryant, there is only this is only the second turn, I believe. So no land drop to bring back the Bloodghasts as well on this turn. I decided I wanted to play with House. All right, so now we'll take a draw here on Bryant's side. He really needs to find himself a copy of Devoted Druid right now. I mean, we need to combo kill our opponent in the very near future here. It's a Simeon Spirit Guide pulled to the front of his hand. Certainly not a standard include into this deck. It's somewhat of a recent development, as far as I'm concerned. Adds to a lot of the speed the deck's functioning for, and honestly, it's certainly going to be very good for him in this matchup. So here's Ranger Captain of Eos. This is not quite the hand that Bryant is looking for in this matchup. Game 1, you're really hoping to just goldfish on decks like Dredge. Keep your hands with Druid, busy or kill you. That's just what you want to be doing. And, Giver into Ranger Captain of Eos is, good and all, but it's not Devoted Druid into kill you. And with this particular start from Soren, I think anything that is not Druid Vizier kill you is going to be pretty rough for Bryant to try and beat. But regardless, we'll have to see him try and do it. So now we're going to go to Soren's main phase. He's got a land drop for turn that's going to bring back multiple Bloodghasts, as well as a couple Life from the Loam, some Stinkweed Imps in hand. We'll see if he has any other action going on here. He definitely has a Conflict Rate in his graveyard as well. Certainly something he could be looking to deploy here. Of course, Bryant does have this Ranger Captain of Eos, so he does have a little bit of protection from that conflict rate as far as his life total is concerned. Alright, here are the attacks. This is pretty standard fare here, I would say, from Soren. Just sending in with the team. That's 4 Narcomoebas, 2 prized amalgams, and 2 blood gas. That is a lot of power. That is 14 power coming into the red zone here. And this is why, when I said I was not confident that the play of anything other than Devoted Druid was going to be good enough here, because Bryant needs to untap and kill his opponent, because he's going to die on his next turn, like, for sure, I want to say. So this one's going to be rough, I think. I think that Bryant's draw is just going to be a little bit too slow here in this game. And we came in a little bit after mulligans, so I'm not certain if either player took any mulligans, but given how this hand is played out from Bryant, I think that this one maybe had to go. It's got protection for the combo, which is really nice if you think you're playing against some sort of interactive deck. Obviously, Soren here is playing Dredge, so far from a fair interactive deck, but when you're looking to play against those interactive decks, these type of hands can be pretty good. They don't assemble a combo particularly quickly, but they're relatively good at protecting it when they do. But if you end up playing against something like this, you can end up just getting completely rolled over, as we're kind of watching here. So, all right, so here comes Life from the Loam. Soren's going to pick up 1, 2, and 3 lands from his graveyard, a Mana Confluence among them. He's got a Bloodfell Caves in his hand, of course, the cycling land from Modern Horizons, a new addition to this Dredge deck. It's quite good, as a matter of fact, as well. Certainly one of the bigger additions from Modern Horizons to this deck. Obviously, there was a little bit of time where you could, theoretically put like a Hogak in your deck and play a like Hogak Dredge deck variant, and that was pretty powerful, absolutely. But now that that's no longer a thing, Dredge kind of really only got the Bloodfell Caves, or the Bloodfell Cavern, as the upgrade to the deck. So there's Vizier of Remedies off the top for Bryant. So now he's sort of in a desperation mode. If he lets Soren just do what he will on his turn, he's going to die to Conflagrate, I think, almost certainly. Just going upstairs with the whole of it. So he's probably going to have to sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos. And if he sacrifices Ranger Captain of Eos, then he's just dead on board. He's also just dead on board anyway. So really, it doesn't feel like a particularly winning spot here for Bryant. I don't think there's really much in his deck that's going to get him out of this particular pickle. He really needs to have Devoted Druid, and there's certainly no Devoted Druids anywhere in his hand. Looks like he's just going to send the turn back on over to Soren. Soren's going to go fetch up a mountain, and I'm sure we're going to see him cycle that cavern here, and we will. See if he wants to dredge. He'll pick up a life. Oh, no, excuse me. He'll pick up a Golgari Thug. Stinkweed, Golgari Thug, Bloodfell Cavern, and Shriekhorn are the dredges. So now he's got a nice Stinkweed Imp to dredge. All right, so here we go. Oh, excuse me. The land's called Forgotten Cave. My bad. I've been calling it the black-red duel that gains life, which I believe I have a reason for. Is because I played against it on Arena earlier today. Out of somebody was playing Jund Sacrifice, but they clearly didn't have all the wild cards. So they were playing Rugged Highlands and Bloodfell Caves. Yes, Forgotten Cave. Thank you to production for correcting me there. But yes, the function is the same. It is the you can pay a single mana of the color and cycle it. It is the Barren Moor, but red. Tranquil Thicket, perhaps more in people's wheelhouse. So here comes discard of quite a few for Conflagrate, I do believe. So this is a Conflagrate for, yeah, plenty. It looks like that is a Conflagrate for enough for Bryant to pick up his cards. So let's take a look at the sideboard here for Bryant. He's got 3 Veil of Summer, 4 Path to Exile, 1 Weather the Storm, 3 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 Disdainful Stroke, and 2 Negates. So looks like we're just kind of trying to go fast here as Bryant. I honestly feel like I might just want to like sleeve up the same 60. Like, if Brian's particularly familiar with the Dredge deck, he should know that most of their removal spells in a post-board game are red, not black. And assuming that is true, as I take a quick look here at Soren's sideboard, it is mostly true, although he's got Thought Seizes and an Abrupt Decay as well. So the Veil of Summers can come in, but I think they're the only thing I'm even really considering. Path to Exile is definitely a good card in theory against Dredge, but it's just not at all what the matchup's about. You can't hope to win a game playing fair against Dredge. It's just such a bad plan on top of your deck being poor at supporting it. So I don't want anything to do with that. I just want to let my opponent do whatever they want to do, and I'm going to try and Goldfish kill them. I think that's really where Bryant wants to be, and especially now that he knows the matchup, I think he's going to have a lot more informed mulligan decisions in a post-board game. And I do think that while the matchup is going to get worse for him in a post-board game, he should still be favored in each individual game, I believe. Although, having to win 2 in a row is a little bit tough. So let's take a look at Soren's board now. Soren's got 3 Nature's Claim, 1 Lightning Axe, 1 Vengeful Pharaoh, 4 Leyline of the Void, 1 Knot of the Bone, 3 Thoughtseize, 1 Abrupt Decay, and 1 Blast Zone. So I think I just want the removal, or the interaction here. Very into my 3 Thoughtseize and my 1 Abrupt Decay, my 1 Lightning Axe. Those are cards that stand out to me. Everything else, I think I'm pretty happy to take it or leave it. The Blast Zone looks pretty appealing to me. That one we can do some pretty fun things with Life from the Loam, Blast Zone, and it's a little awkward because we really, with Life from the Loam, Blast Zone, you kind of want to just be activating it for 1 every turn, but obviously Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies have CMC 2, so you want to be able to put it on 2, so it's a little bit slower, but it is still a powerful engine that is going to force Bryant into certain windows into trying to force a combo through, and if you just end up with a Blast Zone chilling out on 2 at some point in the game, you're going to end up in a pretty favorable spot. It's going to be very hard for Bryant to actually combo off and kill you through that, so I think I definitely like that Blast Zone as well. It looks like players have decided how they're going to sideboard. Let's take a look at the opening hands here for the players. I see a couple Viziers. I do see a Devoted Druid as well, but I don't think I see any lands there for Bryant, so that one's going to have to go back. Soren joins him along in that mulligan, so it looks like players going to 6. I also think I spotted a Teferi Time Raveler in Bryant's opening hand there. That one's perplexing to me. I can't really imagine wanting Teferi Time Raveler in this matchup in any world, and if it was in his main deck and, he had other things to bring out, or he didn't really have anything to bring out, fine. But we did see 3 in his sideboard, so that, it's definitely an inclination to me that Bryant brought into fairies, but, looks like both players just go ahead and sending it back, going to 5, some disciplined mulligans here. Bryant had I think it was 6 lands Giver of Runes hand with that 6-card hand, so that's obviously no good. That one has to go for sure, and I haven't gotten a look at Soren's hand, unfortunately, but looks like no good. This one from Soren, oh boy, this one from Soren is quite bad as well. Got a Life from the Loam and a Forgotten Caves. That's really the only action that's going on here. Don't have any powerful enablers of any kind. Looks like Bryant, on the other hand, has an Oko Thief of Crowns. So there is that Oko. Like I mentioned, this is the last day that Oko is legal, but it is still currently legal. So we're getting Oko's last stand here tonight on camera. Looks like Bryant is going to keep this 5-card hand. Teferi and Finale of Devastation were the cards pulled to the front. Oko is a card that I could easily see getting sent back here as well. The Teferi seems underwhelming to me. The Oko seems relatively underwhelming. A land could go, probably. Looks like Soren's just going to send it back and go to 4. So, if Bryant did keep the Oko in his hand, Oko's probably a reasonably good plan against Dredge on a mull to 4. If they have a non-functional draw of basically any kind, then you're going to be able to do all right with just Oko. Just try and win the game with literally only Oko. So now let's take a look at this will be 4 here from Soren. He's got a Stinkweed Imp, Lava Axe, Merchant of the Veil. Looks like a windswept, or excuse me, a wooded foothills in there as well. This hand looks pretty reasonable to me. It looks like Lightning Axe might be our best enabler here. Merchant of the Veil does an okay job of it as well. It's no Faithless Looting, of course, but, you know, what is? Alright, looks like he's going to go ahead and slap 3 cards on the bottom now. He's on the draw as well. I believe he kept a hand of Life from the Loam, Lava Axe, or excuse me, Life from the Loam, Lightning Axe, Merchant of the Veil, and Man, I keep saying Windswept Heath. Wooded Foothills. Oh boy. Getting all sorts of cards confused here. And speaking of Windswept Heath, there Bryant will go ahead and crack his Windswept Heath on the end of the turn. I can just say that was my excuse, is that Bryant was playing a Windswept Heath, and that's why it kept confusing me. But I think for some reason my brain just keeps autofilling Wooded Foothills into Windswept Heath, so... Looks like that one is going to find a Breeding Pool. No white mana yet here for Bryant. Gonna have to make sure that he's got some more of that hanging out in his hand. I do believe he does, as there's a Temple Garden towards the back of the hand. Eternal Witness pulled to the front now. Of course, that will not be the play this turn. There is that Path to Exile that I mentioned not having a particular liking for in a post-board matchup of this caliber. Although, given this particular hand, it is pretty reasonable. If we just draw another land and try and win the game with Oko, then, you know what, I'm pretty happy to have a Path to Exile. The Path to Exile, Oko, just kill your opponent who mulled to 4 plan, seems pretty powerful to me. So here we'll see Sorin fetch out an untapped Stomping Ground. We're going to see Merchant of the Veil discarding a Life from the Loam, and then he'll just probably go ahead and dredge it back. Looks like he just takes the draw, actually, so... Definitely an interesting choice there. I wonder why he chose to draw. He must be missing additional lands. Yes, certainly he is. So, didn't actually have the second land to be able to cast the Life from the Loam, I believe. So, looks like he's found it, though, now. So, he's going to go ahead and dredge the 3. There's that Blast Zone that I mentioned. He's going to hit a Narcomoeba and a Stinkweed Imp. So, he's got some definite action going on now here. Forgotten Cave will just enter the battlefield as a land this turn. Of course, this is some of the upside of the card. You see it getting cycled for red significantly more often than any other mode on this card, but you know, when you gotta play it as a land, you're happy it taps for mana. So here comes Oko, Thief of Crowns. He's gonna +2, that'll make a food token. Not much sense turning a Narcomoeba into a 3/3 elk, so just one friendly food coming in here for Bryant. He'll send it back over to Sorin. Now he's going to dredge 5 with a Stinkweed Imp. Let's see what he finds. Shriekhorn, Copperline Gorge, Nature's Claim, Merchant of the Veil, and Thoughtseize. The Nature's Claim a little puzzling to me. I'm not certain why that one would have gotten brought in against Devoted Druid. I'm going to have to think on that one. It's not... You can't really hit a Walking Ballista in the middle of a combo or anything like that, so... Alright. Here comes Life from the Loam. Picking up that Blast Zone. So now he's got multiple lands here with which to decide what to do. Here's an attack for 1. Then he's just going to go ahead and send that turn back. Alright. Postmortem Lunge off the top here for Bryant means that I think this game is quickly becoming all about Oko. As I expect that we're going to see an elk made out of this food and then just start attacking. I mean, Sorin definitely has plenty of action going on right now. You know, he mulled to 4, but he's got quite a bit going on. Although it's going on largely out of his control. It's largely based on... You know, is he hitting the cards he needs to off the top of his deck while dredging in order to have powerful plays? Because right now he's kind of just spinning his wheels with cards like Life from the Loam. And, you know, that's not going to kill your opponent anytime soon. So we did see Bryant make an elk, but then he chose not to attack. I'm not very confident that I like that play very much at all. I really just want to start just want to attack. I mean, I think that Oko is such a powerful fast clock here that like we actually have a legitimate chance to just go ahead and, kill our opponent with just a bunch of elk this game, especially if he keeps fizzling like we saw he fizzled again this turn. So here comes a blast zone. He's going to go ahead and cast the card Merchant of the Veil. Certainly not a particularly powerful play here from Soren. Just a Merchant of the Veil. He's got Life from the Loam still hanging out in his hand, as well as a slew of lands to accompany it. Bryant will sacrifice his Windswept Heath, go find himself a tapped Temple Garden. That'll put him to 15 at the end of the turn. We'll see if he has any effects he wants to take, but it looks like he's just going to go ahead and draw. It puts him to 14. My apologies. There's a second copy of Path to Exile here off the top from Bryant. And once again, I mean, I'm not certain what cards Bryant took out for these copies of Path to Exile, but I do not love that. So I do, however, quite enjoy this. So Bryant is attempting to exchange control of Merchant of the Veil and his own food token. So a couple things here. First things first, definitely want to attack with the food token before I am actually giving it over to Bryant. Oh, he must not have an elk. It must not be an elk. It must have been 2 food. Never mind. This makes more sense. So instead of elking the food, Bryant just elected to make a second food. So that's certainly what happened here, because Bryant now ended up with a single food left over. I do actually, now that I know that this is what's happened, I significantly prefer Bryant elking the food, but still. So it looks like Bryant's going to respond by Path to Exiling Merchant of the Veil to a Lightning Axe. Soren's going to be A-okay with this. He don't think he cares at all, because he got the important part of that Lightning Axe off, which was discard Stinkweed Imp. So here come 5 off the top. Thoughtseize, another Stinkweed Imp, Bloodgast, and Forgotten Caves. Couple of Bloodgasts. Those are pretty good hits for Soren here. Still not, the high octane sort of draws that we saw from last game, where he was milling all the creatures he could ever want to be put into play. But a couple copies of Bloodgast is certainly a good start here, as he'll play a Wooded Foothills and then bring those Bloodgasts back from the graveyard. Postmortem Lunge in hand for Bryant, as well as another copy of Finale of Devastation. I'm very curious that Bryant elected to cast Path to Exile that turn, or hold up Path to Exile that turn, instead of casting the that copy of Finale of Devastation. Just go find a Devoted Druid. But, well, he found a Devoted Druid, as a matter of fact, here, as he managed to draw one off the top now. Here comes that Devoted Druid, and even if it ends up dying, I think he's going to be quite happy with the outcome, given that he has a Postmortem Lunge in his hand. Now Bryant has the Finale of Devastation, has the Devoted Druid. He's just looking for a way to win the game or find Vizier of Remedies. So there's a lot of hits in his deck. Where are all the Okos? There's an Oko in play right now, dude. Come on. There's an Oko right there. It's making food. We also did see Bryant sacrifice a food to gain 3 life at end step, I do believe. So I believe that puts his life total up to 17. And this is just an interesting choice. This really shows that Bryant certainly took a different approach to this game. Yeah, the glare is unfortunate. I'm sorry about the glare there. But yes, that is an Oko Thief of Crowns in play. Bryant took a different approach to this game. From a whole standpoint than I would have. I think when I see my opponent go to 4 and I have an Oko in my hand, I think that I can probably just try and win the game with the Oko. And it looks like Bryant still elected to say, you know what, my opponent is either going to function or have interaction, and he's certainly not going to have both on a mulligan to 4. So Bryant just decided to, okay, well, I'm just going to sit back and relax and not die, because my opponent's either going to have, a clock or they're going to have interaction. But if they have interaction, then that's fine. I can sit here and, play a defensive game and play for the long game, and I'll hopefully be able to establish a combo twice or establish a combo with some form of protection or resiliency. Or they're just going to have a quick clock, and I'll be able to quite effectively just put my combo into play and kill them. So definitely an interesting take here from Bryant's side. I like I said, I think I would have played this game slightly differently if I were him, but that does not mean that my plays are correct or anything like that. These are just the musings of a troubled mind. So looks like here's some attacks at Oko, Thief of Crowns. Path to Exile will get pointed at a Bloodghast, and then a trade with the Eternal Witness. Oko takes 1 from Narcomoeba, and now we'll see Life from the Loam. It's going to recollect a couple of lands here from Soren's graveyard. So humble. I think that's the first humble thing I've said ever. So, I kind of gotta get my PSAs out now while I can. Here comes a Bloodghast back from the yard. Prized Amalgam soon to follow. The best friends, of course. And like we said, Bryant's 1 card away from having the kill here. Of course, Bloodghast cannot block, so there is no way that there is no way that he can find a way to do this. So this is an interesting position. Once Upon a Time was the draw for Bryant. So Bryant has a couple options here. The most humble booth in the most humble player in the booth. I agree with that. I believe I am. So it looks like we're going to see Bryant put a -1/-1 counter on his Devoted Druid, and then go ahead and cast this Finale of Devastation. So this is certainly the interesting decision that I mentioned, as it ends up getting taken down by the Blast Zone. And then we'll see Bryant go ahead and resolve his copy of Finale of Devastation. He's going to get Vizier of Remedies. Now, he does have a Postmortem Lunge in his hand, so he can cast the Postmortem Lunge, and then he has a Once Upon a Time to try and find lethal off the top here. But if he misses, he's going to end up with a Druid in exile and nothing else going on. So he's got infinite mana for this turn and this turn only. This Once Upon a Time absolutely has to hit. Otherwise, Bryant's going to be out of luck. So let's see what he can find. Here comes Once Upon a Time. Oh, I don't think that was a hit. He did find another copy of Devoted Druid, though. So the second copy of Devoted Druid is going to allow him to just go ahead and put it back into play and then have some more looks. He's going to sacrifice another food, gain 3 life. He can obviously do that for free. And then I assume we'll see him put the second copy of Devoted Druid into play here. Oh, he didn't cast the Druid? Wow, that is perplexing to me. I can't imagine why you wouldn't cast this copy of Devoted Druid here. All right, so here is a Dredge of Golgari, Grave Thug. We got a, not Golgari Grave Troll, excuse me. So we got Dredge 4, Prized Amalgam, the only relevant card here. Is another Forgotten Caves, hits the bin for Soren. He's got quite a few of those hanging out in that graveyard now, so his Life from the Loam is a real engine now. So now we'll see him cycle one of the aforementioned Forgotten Caves. He'll dredge 3 more cards, Merchant of the Veil, Blood Crypt, and a Narcomoeba. Narcomoeba coming into play, as it tends to do. That'll trigger the Prized Amalgam. Now we'll take a look through the graveyard, see if he finds anything else relevant to dredge. I didn't see anything there. Alright, here comes Life from the Loam. I expect that we're going to see some Forgotten Caves back into the hand here for Soren, as he does pull out those 2. And then, once again, Blast Zone. I expect we'll see Blast Zone get put into play here. And this is what I mentioned. I mean, the fact that Bryant didn't cast Devoted Druid this turn means that now Soren can put a counter on the Blast Zone and then untap and have Blast Zone on 2 again. Whereas Bryant would have had a turn of clear here if he had cast the Devoted Druid this turn and then gotten to untap. And perhaps there's like a Conflagrate in the graveyard that I haven't caught a glimpse of, or that I've missed while I've been talking, but I don't think there is. And if that's true, then I think that Bryant may have just like effectively locked himself out of this game by not casting this Devoted Druid on this turn here. So I think this could have been a potentially fatal error. And obviously, Bryant does still need to get lucky and draw, what is lethal off the top. But you give yourself quite a few outs here when you have infinite mana. There's a whole lot of things that you can get, so. Looks like Soren just given everything a think, deciding how he wants to go about doing this. Here's an attack for 3. I'll be stunned if Bryant elects to do anything about that. Here comes another copy of Prized Amalgam. And then we will see another Prized Amalgam enter the battlefield at the end of Bryant's turn here. Missed the draw. Eternal Witness. Oh, no. Eternal Witness was absolutely a lethal card here. If Bryant had played the Devoted Druid on the last turn, but now the Blast Zone is going to make it so that Bryant is unable to kill his opponent on this turn. He's just a little short with the mana here. I think I quite enjoy the decision here to just play Devoted Druid and then say go, and hold the Eternal Witness in your hand for potential for a theoretical different backup line here after your Devoted Druid and Vizier get taken out by the Blast Zone in play. But we'll see what Bryant elects to do. There's plenty of options. Obviously, his entire graveyard available to him with the addition of that Eternal Witness to his hand. Eternal Witness, certainly one of the more interesting cards in this matchup. So it looks like Bryant has a Judge question, actually, so. So, appears that the Judge question has something to do with Eternal Witness and Postmortem Lunge. I'm sure I'll get clarification on what the exact Judge question is here very soon. All right, so we'll let our Judge on staff handle this one real quick while Soren takes a flick through of the cards in his hand. Got a Narcomoeba, a Life from the Loam in hand, and that's pretty much all that's relevant. He's got some cycle lands as well, but really what matters here is he's got enough mana to put a counter on Blast Zone and tick it up to 2. So that's going to prevent Bryant from being able to combo off this turn. As now we'll see Bryant sit back down, and hopefully we'll get updated on exactly the question that Bryant was asking there, so that we can get a nice insight into what was going on. It looks like he was asking about the ruling or the interaction between lunging and Eternal Witness, and then giving that Eternal Witness to his opponent with Oko. That's pretty interesting. All right, so here is an interesting, and for those of you wondering, it is still exiled at the end of that. So now we are in an interesting spot here, as we see Bryant elects to trade his Eternal Witness for a Prized Amalgam on Soren's side of the battlefield, and we did see Soren tick up that Blast Zone at end of turn, so he is protected from the combo as of current. Obviously, Bryant will have infinite mana on untap here, so Soren is more or less going to be forced to sacrificing his Blast Zone on this turn, although hitting a Conflagrate off that Dredge there from the Stinkweed Imp will potentially give him some extra options now, as he could potentially just go ahead and Conflagrate down the Devoted Druid. So, Soren, of course, does know about the Postmortem Lunge in Bryant's hand. He did just get it back with an Eternal Witness, so I actually quite like the line of Conflagrate your Devoted Druid and then just attack and see how things go. Looks like here's an attack for 1 at Oko. That'll end up killing the Oko, and then the rest going at Bryant. Bryant deciding if he wants to line up any blocks. I don't think lining up any blocks is even remotely reasonable here. I think you have to force your opponent to use their spells and just hope that you get very lucky with your top decks. But I think that Bryant essentially chumping away his board here just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't know what the plan to win the game is here if we're chumping away the board. Is our plan still to draw a Vizier of Remedies, and then what? I mean, we've got a Postmortem Lunge to be able to bring back a Druid. That's all well and good, but I don't really know what we're going to be able to do to win the game here, because we can draw a Vizier theoretically to get infinite mana, but then we can't have a payoff. And now we see Life from the Loam from Soren. And granted, this is quite a bit of damage, and we had to not die to Conflagrate, so potentially Bryant was doing a little bit more math along those veins, as holy wow, that actually looks like a whole lot of cards in Soren's hand. So maybe Bryant was actually just forced into those blocks because of this, but all things considered, I think we're seeing Bryant ending up getting very punished this game for not casting that Devoted Druid on his last turn. I think that had he just cast the Devoted Druid last turn, he would have probably won this game. I don't think Soren would have been able to do anything to disrupt the combo. But yeah, this ends up putting Bryant down to a single life. So I must apologize there, Bryant. You definitely did have to make those blocks. Has Conflagrate for 10. Ends up putting him down to 1. Take a look at the sideboard here. He can't even cast the Postmortem Lunge in his hand because he does not have black mana, which is just brutal. And I think we're just going to see Bryant pick his cards up here very shortly. Looks like he's tapping 5 mana. Finale of Devastation for 3. He's going to take a quick look through his deck, see if he's got any... Jeez, I don't know. I got nothing. Got any Platinum Angels in there? Yeah, for 3 mana Platinum Angels? Kind of digging for those. Yeah, take a quick pan through. I like the Simian Spirit Guide. Get the Simian Spirit Guide. I love it. It's perfect. Couldn't ask for a better way to do things. All right, and that is going to do it here, as we will see Soren take down Bryant in the first match of the night. So well played, both individuals. I enjoyed that match quite a bit. I think that so a little bit of... I think I just in general disagreed with Bryant's stance on how you're supposed to play the matchup, which is definitely one of those things that I could just certainly be wrong about. I don't have very much experience on either side of this matchup, but that's just kind of where my mind leads me to believe you're supposed to be. So I know Bryant has more experience than I do in this particular deck, so if he knows this matchup better than I do, I apologize, or, I could easily be wrong here, but I think just a general different philosophy on how you're supposed to approach this matchup here between me and Bryant led to me disagreeing with a few of those decisions. But regardless, Soren will end up taking down the match. So well played, Soren. Well played, Bryant. With that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Scoot Mob. Scoot Mob is Paradise Games sponsored competitive Magic the Gathering team. I am a member of the team, as well as some awesome local players in the greater Seattle area. I think it's an excellent team. I'm really, really excited about all the things we're going to do. We're going to be bringing you a whole lot of content. We just got our jerseys in. You can expect a whole lot of that going on. And obviously, we've kind of been tearing it up. We showed up with 4 members to a 1K yesterday in town, a local 1K, and myself, James Walton, and Noble Solana Walkinshaw ended up taking first, second, and third, essentially, in the tournament. None of us losing a single match, so we ran it up at the local 1K. The team's been doing really well, thriving, so I'm really excited, and if you're interested in getting in contact with us, go ahead and add us on Twitter at MobScoot, and make sure you go ahead and join our Discord. It's free to join. We're on there all the time. If you have any questions you want to ask any of us, please be sure to do so, and we all have individual Twitters as well, so if you're interested in talking to any of us or keeping up with any of us directly, I highly recommend you hit us all up on Twitter. You can find all of us through MobScoot, or, like I said, with the Discord link that is on your screen currently. So with that, we're going to leave you guys with the time machine. We'll be back for round number 2. I'm certain it won't be very long, so make sure you don't go anywhere.
All right, guys, we're back. It sounds like you didn't get to see the beginning of round 1, which is unfortunate, and the person responsible for it has been sacked. But we're back here for game 2, so it's going to be Greg versus Chris, so we get to see another round of Teamer Adventures, this time against Orzhov Aristocrats.
So we saw Orzhov Aristocrats 2 weeks ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. He's been playing a bunch of decks pretty similar to this. It looks like we actually have him seated on the wrong side of the table. Greg, why did you switch sides of the table? You monster.
Monster.
But anyway, we've seen Chris's deck a time or two before, but it changes by probably 10 cards.
I believe
every
you.
week. So he's no longer on Midnight Reaper.
Okay.
Which, for my money, is the big way you generate an advantage off of your Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven.
Yep.
He had a Knight of the Ebon Legion as his 1-drop.
Okay.
Previously, he was playing Footlight Fiend, but he figured it was more important that he has a 1-drop than that he gets value off of sacking the 1-drop. And so if you're going to have a 1-drop, it might as well be one that can win the game.
That makes some sense.
The white is there overwhelmingly for Cruel Celebrant, but I believe he has Ethereal Absolutions in his main board.
Okay.
He's playing Ayara, First of Lochthwain, and Blood-Soaked Aerialist, Bloodseeker Aerialist, the Ajani's Pride May That Flies. And that thing now is how he really gets his value off of his Cauldron Familiar.
All right. So sounds like an interesting deck. How do we think it fares against Stomp?
I think for the most part, the games in which the Orzhov deck gets to run away with the 2-mana priest of the Forgotten Gods.
Yeah.
The games where you get First Gods. I think it's First Gods. But that card. I think the games where he gets to run away with a priest are the games that he's going to win.
Okay.
Stomp is pretty good at preventing that from happening. But like Petty Theft is not that good. It'll fog it, but it won't disrupt it in the same way.
Fogging the priest is pretty easy. Like if they you get to fog it until their turn 3, right? So at least they have to replay it too, and it's more like a time walk at that point if they're trying to run away with the priest.
Yeah, but also Chris's deck is really good at just dropping 1-mana creatures and then blocking with them. So he can get the priest going on turn 5 or 6 or 7, and it's not too late. I mean, again, Greg showed us that he can on turn 7 fling for he did it for 12, but he could have done it for 24 with an expansion.
Yeah.
So it's possible that Chris does really need to get it going in a timely fashion, because Greg can go over the top.
But kind of unlikely. How does... I'm mostly worried about Greg's creatures. They seem really big compared to what Chris is playing.
Right, and Chris is not planning on trading my 2-drop with your 2-drop.
Yeah.
Chris is planning on chump blocking with my 1/1 and then making another 1/1 and chump blocking with it. Until you're dead for some reason.
That's fair. So what is this 1-drop?
Oh, this has lifelink and death touch.
Got it.
I don't know what it's called. Priest of the New Moon? Vampire of the New Moon? Vampire of the Dire Straits? I'm just making stuff up.
I see a moon, and
I
it's
see-
a vampire.
So if you ultimate your Nocturne pony
Okay.
card, you can tutor this Vampire of the Dire Moon because it has a moon in its art.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Okay. So what form are we reading this in? Legacy?
Well, I mean, it's a silver bordered card. So Commander.
Vintage.
It gives your opponent becomes your friend. Like, that seems pretty powerful.
Yeah.
My friends don't cast tendrils on me. Greg he had his start where he goes turn 1 Innkeeper, turn 2 Clover. So everything that Greg does is going to be just a little better than it's supposed to be.
Yeah, just a little. This stomp looks great. I don't know if he has it.
Yeah, Stomp wipes the board right now. But here
Oh, there's a stomp.
the Vampire of the Dire Moon got in for 1, and it already made the Aerialist a little bigger. Oof.
Oh, double stomp the Aerialist.
Oh, I thought Aerialist was a 1/1, so it was a 2/2 with the counter.
No, it's a 2/3.
Oh, it has numbers on it already?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem fair. That card might be really good.
Yeah, I got crushed by it in limited. By crushed by it in limited, I mean my opponent played it and then gained life.
Yeah.
And then I took it and killed my opponent with it. It was sweet.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, this card starts reasonably costed and gets huge for no reason.
Yeah. It's nuts.
All right.
Yeah. M20, if you play that and pass, your opponent probably picks their cards up. That's about what I've noticed.
Man, M20 was like a sneaky good set. It has like 5 cards in it that are Band of Pioneer.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's Veil Summer.
Field of the Dead.
Okay.
Maybe that's all. I think there's another one, but all right. That's 2 is not particularly close to 5. Oh, Path of a Chase, Leyline of Abundance.
Oh.
You're at 3. All right, getting closer.
Yeah. Well, even 3 is just enough, probably. Like, Pioneer has, 37 sets? And one set holds almost half the bands?
Well,
The other set holds the other half.
right?
Throne holds half, M20 holds half, and together they make the band list.
What? No. Concentrator holds half. Concentrator has 5 band cards.
Oh, yeah, you got me there.
Yeah. All right, so our first Aerialist died. We spent an order of midnight getting back our Aerialist. We still have this 1/1 with Death Touch and Lifelink. At some point...
Yeah, alright, we'll trade it for a Stompy Boy, and that's a cool Celebrant in play?
No, that's the Aerialist is back.
Oh, the Aerialist is back.
So it's back to being a 3/4 because we gained life trading off our 1/1 with Lifelink.
4/3. Yep, okay. Double Stomp it.
We're stomping some more.
Those sounded like pretty weak stomps, but I don't think 2 damage stomps are that big either.
Yeah, but this 4/3 is the biggest thing on the battlefield, and it drew a card. So how clean is that? 5 mana, kill your 4 toughness creature, make a 4/3 draw card.
Sounds fine.
Sounds problematic.
Yeah, it's like Flame Tongue Kavu, but better.
Yeah, like Flame Tongue Kavu that cantrips. So Chris is down to 3 cards in hand. He's got 4 mana, and he had no relevant play on turn 5.
Chris has 1. Oh, jeez. This game looks very much Greg-sided. Oh, he has 3 cards in hand, not 1. Okay.
Murder Shredder, I'll take 4.
Yep, that sounds... Yep.
But that does put him down to 17. He has been gaining life, so
Yeah.
taking that 4 doesn't mean that he's immediately dead or even
Yeah.
super close to dead.
And he has 2 spells in Adventure. 1 can't block, but they're there.
Right, and Greg, right this moment, doesn't have any threats. But we are getting to the point where Greg's going to start drawing spells and casting giant spells. If this escape flips a Beanstalk Giant, there he is.
Well,
2 Beanstalk Giants. So that means Greg's going to spend his next turn generating an obscene amount of mana. And then...
if we sees a second Clover here, that'd be insane.
yeah.
Unnecessary, but insane. Because next turn he gets to go spend 2 mana, double Explosive Vegetation.
Right.
That's neat.
Right. So that's going to get him from 7 to 11 mana. He'll have 12 for a draw step, which means...
Well, he doesn't actually net mana. Yeah, sure. He doesn't net mana next turn.
Right.
The following.
I'm assuming that he's spending... I'm acting like he's spending next turn making mana, and then spending the following turn
he's not
winning
even
the
spending
game.
next turn making mana. He's spending 2 mana next turn to make 6 for the following.
He drew a clover.
Sick. Well, now he's spending 2 mana to make 6 land drops.
Yeah. He's actually not costing any of his velocity for the turn on this. Put 6 lands into play.
Yeah. He played the clover, so still 2 mana.
Oh, sure.
Turn.
Okay.
But this was like 33% better than it would have been.
So Chris is going 50% better. It would have been 67% as good. Chris is going to spend his next turn deploying some dude. And Greg is going to spend his next turn wishing for a expansion and a fling, and then casting a beanstalk giant.
And flinging it real good.
Or can he do that this turn?
He can cast Granted this turn.
Okay.
Cannot do anything else.
And he can Granted for 3 things. He can cast one of them this turn and then have an expansion and a fling left in his hand.
Yeah, I don't know what one thing was to cast, but...
For 2 mana. Kendra's Transformation, turn that 2/3 into a 3/3.
Oh, that's draw a card.
Oh, once in future. Which means if for some reason this doesn't work, he's just going to do it again.
Neat. Chris, feeling the burn, the pressure, the beanstalk giant. What does Chris have?
How does he get out of this?
Yep.
Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. We got round number 2 here for Paradise Games Monday Night Modern. We got James on Green Black Yawgmoth versus Sam on Jund. This one shaping up to be a bit of a banger here, as this Yawgmoth deck has really been taking people by storm lately. And with the bans, a lot of people are pegging this as a current frontrunner as a tier 1 deck in the upcoming format. Of course, Jund, an old classic. I'm actually very interested to see how this game plays out here. So let's take a look at James's hand as it gets laid out for us. I actually don't have a great look at it, but it looks like it is obviously his first turn of the game. Was Forest Birds of Paradise. There's a Blood Artist in Twilight Mire, a Court of Calling, a Strangleroot Geist, and a Young Wolf are the cards in his hand, I do believe. So there's a lot of creatures with Undying in this deck, which actually leads me to believe it may have a reasonably good Jund matchup as Yawgmoth right on time, exactly where we wanted it, right on top, so it didn't get hit by that Thoughtseize. Excellent. Here comes the Young Wolf. It is a 1/1 with Undying, that's all it is, and a Blood Artist to follow it up. So James is in a pretty good position to have a nice combo kill here set up relatively soon. Alright, so now we'll take a second here. Sam gives to think about what he's going to do. Obviously, if he has a follow-up Thoughtseize here, he'll be able to take the Yawgmoth out of James's hand, and that'll leave James with a whole lot of not much going on. Ooh, and here it is. Here's the Thoughtseize. He's got the Yawgmoth. He's going to have to show it to him. So turns out we actually wanted that Yawgmoth one card further down there. So obviously Yawgmoth's going to have to get out of here. That's obviously shenanigans, up to no good here. So yeah, Yawgmoth will hit the bin. Now James left with nothing but Court of Calling in his hand, and that's an interesting one to be left with for sure, as James definitely has the option if he hits another land, or he needs some land, some creatures to potentially go find a Yawgmoth with it. But with Sam having 2 lands in play, James could feel pressured into just deploying the Court of Calling early to play around a potential Liliana of the Veil. How you doing tonight, Avvis Pizza? How is it going? Are you a fan of this sweet green-black Yawgmoth deck? This is I have yet to play a game with the deck, so I'm definitely doing a lot of speculating here as to what things are going on tonight as we see Lightning Bolt take out Blood Artist. And this does not look particularly good here as a start for for James. He's got some birds, some Court of Callings, and some Young Wolves. And I don't really know how much of a plan this is against Jund. Yeah, you know, my initial inclination is that Jund should eat this deck as well, but all of your creatures having Undying is actually pretty relevant. Like, you can't really just Lightning Bolt a lot. Like, there's going to be a lot of draws that just line up really well against Jund because all of your creatures just have Undying, and if Yawgmoth ever resolves, it's a big problem for Jund for sure. I mean, you're just going to get to draw so many cards, and here we'll see Liliana enter the battlefield, and certainly James is going to cast Court of Calling for 0 in response. He's going to go find a Dryad Arbor, so definitely a nice little play here from James. Heads up, make sure he remembers that he has that Dryad Arbor. This is assuming he has Dryad Arbor in his deck, which most lists do. He does indeed. And then, of course, no cards in hand for James means Sam will have to discard a card of his own. Sam's left with a Scavenging Ooze and I think one other card, though I didn't get a good look at it. Of course, James only has 2 power in play, though he does have the requisite 4 mana were he to draw a Yawgmoth off the top. He cannot Eldritch Evolution into Yawgmoth. Ooh, Giraffe's Messenger. Hello. Now that's a good one. See, that's a card that's pretty hard for Jund to beat, it feels like. Alright, so here is attack for 2 at the Liliana. Liliana will go ahead and go down to this. This is 3 black pips, so I don't actually think James can tap the way he's tapped for this spell. He needs to tap 2 Birds of Paradise and the... Oh, no, there's a Twilight Mire. Excuse me. Not an Overgrown Tomb, it's a Twilight Mire. It looks like Overgrown Tomb. You'll have to excuse me. Alright, so Giraffe's Messenger going to enter the battlefield. Of course, makes Sam lose 2 life when it does. And a 3 mana 3/2 with Undying that's going to essentially force Sam to lose, you know, what is likely 4 life is pretty big deal. But speaking of a big deal, Scavenging Ooze is nice against all of these Undying creatures. It has the ability to eat them out of the graveyard with the Undying trigger on the stack. So he can actually just go ahead and prevent any of this coming back from happening. And then James is just playing overcosted vanilla creatures, and that is a really bad spot to be against Jund. So, all right, another copy of Birds of Paradise here, as now we'll see if James wants to make any attacks. I think he's got a pretty clean attack here with exactly Giraffe's Messenger, as I believe he doesn't have too many cards. I think there's only 1 creature in the graveyard, plus Sam only has a single green mana, so I think he's more than happy to trade the Giraffe's Messenger with the Scavenging Ooze. Of course, the Giraffe's Messenger would come back, and Sam would not be able to eat it. But this attack will likely result in the Liliana dying. Interesting block on the Dryad Arbor here, as opposed to the Young Wolf. Oh, there's a Stranglerootgeist in the graveyard as well. And this will result in Liliana dying. Scavenging Ooze still in play, and still a very big problem here for James. We're getting to the point where he really needs to find a Yawgmoth to be able to get back into this game. But if he does find it, he could stand a chance here. Of course, he does have 2 Undying creatures, but he cannot combo with a Scavenging Ooze in play because Sam can just eat the creatures out of the graveyard. Unfortunate, Sam has to have Stomping Ground enter the battlefield tapped this turn, means that he only has a single green mana left available here. And it is a Nurturing Peatland, so it's even going to cost him a life if he elects to use it. Of course, the Scavenging Ooze gains the life right back, but still does not gain you the life that you'd want it to. As I believe another Young Wolf was the draw, though I didn't get a great look at it there. And here we'll see an attack. And once again, Sam just electing to go ahead and eat a creature before blocks, whereas he could just block and then eat the creature with the Undying trigger on the stack, and that could end up quite poorly for James, but staying life neutral, making it bigger, looks like the plan. I think Sam's going to be forced to block here, and if we're forced to block, we may as well block the larger creature, but looks like James actually manages to get an Undying out of it. And yeah, here's another copy of Young Wolf, as I suspected. So now he's got a 2/2, a 3/2, and a 1/1. The squad attempts to defeat Junt. Good luck. I wonder if now is the time where we're going to want to cycle this Nurturing Peatland here from Sam. We've got no action in our hand, just nothing but Scavenging Ooze going on. And admittedly, Scavenging Ooze is doing the Lord's work here, but looks like he's just going to send it back. Determines that now is not the time to transmit this Nurturing Peatland into another card. Didn't get a good look at what the top card was there for James. Strangleroot Geist would be a very good one right now. I think we would have seen that one by now. Eldritch Evolution is the card. Okay. So that's interesting for sure. So we can sacrifice Geralf's Messenger to go get Yawgmoth with an Eldritch Evolution. Oh, no, we can't. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is really hard. I think that we're supposed to attack with everything. I think that we're supposed to start with attacking and then likely attempt to turn a Birds of Paradise into a Geralf's Messenger for lethal. I imagine where the most likely place for this to end up is, but it looks like James is going to go ahead and do this. Well, we can Yawgmoth, we just can't combo, which is the problem here. All right, so here comes Yawgmoth. James can start by just, sacrificing like a Birds of Paradise and drawing a card. Seems pretty appealing to me. Perhaps James will put himself in the position where he can attempt to just shoot down the Scavenging Ooze using -1/-1 counters, though that gets a little awkward because every time you put a -1/-1 counter on something, you have to sacrifice a creature so then Scavenging Ooze can eat it. So that's a little weird. So now we have Yawgmoth in play. Now what are we supposed to do? I think I like starting by sacrificing the tapped Birds of Paradise here. I think that's a good place to start. Sam, of course, has 3 more untapped green lands. So we're not realistically ever going to be able to combo here on this turn. And, if we end up drawing a blank here off the Yawgmoth, we can always actually just go ahead and use our 2 untapped Birds of Paradise to discard the blank and end up putting an additional -1/-1 counter on the Scavenging Ooze. And then, we're making some reasonable headway. Green-black stinkers? Well, come on, man. These aren't stinkers. That's Young Wolf, dude. You talking trash about Young Wolf? Come on. Yeah, it's there's some stinkers in this one, that's for sure. I'll agree with that. There's some bad ones here. We got Birds of Paradise and Young Wolves attempt to take down Jund, This is a true Muhammad Ali story right now. Young Wolf is the goodest boy. I don't know, man. I have a general theory about Young Wolf in this deck, and my inclination is that it does not belong in this deck, and that the consistency is not worth how bad the actual card is. But like I said, I have not played a game with the deck, so take that one with a grain of salt. But this is the coolest green black little kid deck I've ever seen. Nah, there's no like Lockstone Smiters or anything like that. So Lockstone Smiter is the absolute staple green X little kid card. Wait, he opened at least 2 Yawgmoths from the Modern Horizons 1 pack, though, so he's got to be feeling pretty good about his EV after that, I think. So, all right, what do we got going on here? Tarmogoyf. The draw from Sam. Pretty good one. Tarmogoyf doing a reasonable job of stabilizing this board, and now we'll see if James elects to just go ahead and take an untap. I believe he should. No point sacrificing anything on end step here. If James manages to find a way to remove Scavenging Ooze, he can just combo kill his opponent. Sam still has access to 3 green mana. And James is at a very high life total, so he can cycle through his deck very, very well. So he's going to go ahead and put the -1/-1 counter on the Young Wolf, so it'll effectively cancel out the Undying. He'll draw a card. I missed what the card was, unfortunately. Oh, 2 Modern Horizons 1 packs? Dude, these Yawgmoths are like $25 a pop now. You gotta be feeling good about getting 2 Yawgmoths out of Modern Horizons packs. Alright. Another copy of Young Wolf off the top for James. Oh, man. Of course, we do not have access to Blood Artist here in our deck anymore. That one got removed by a Lightning Bolt much earlier in the game, and the decks only play 1 of that card, so it is not anywhere to be found, so here James is going to go ahead and sacrifice 1 Young Wolf to go ahead and draw a card. He'll put a -1/-1 counter on. I missed what he put the counter on, but largely irrelevant. Sam did go ahead and spend the green mana to exile the Young Wolf while it was in the graveyard. I definitely agree with this choice. If James manages to find enough Undying threats where he can overtax Sam's mana, he could end up theoretically winning this turn. And I mean, he really needs more Young Wolves, to be honest. But unfortunately, he doesn't have any more available to him at current. So he's going to go ahead, sacrifice the Birds of Paradise. He'll put another -1/-1 counter on Tarmogoyf. Then he's going to draw 1 more card. Churning through his deck, Swamp, Young Wolf, Verdant Catacombs. Now the card's in his hand. He can still always activate the second ability there of Yawgmoth to discard a card and proliferate to continue shrinking the Tarmogoyf, should he find that necessary. Here goes 1 more Birds of Paradise, putting a third -1/-1 counter onto the Tarmogoyf. Now he's just pretty much entirely fizzled out, as he only has lands and Young Wolves. He's got a Young Wolf for each mana that Sam has open here, which could leave him in a position to theoretically win the game, but I don't think it can realistically happen. I think he would need a couple more copies of Young Wolf to be able to really do it, because he has already played his land for the turn, unfortunately. He was a Nurturing Peatland, which he used a floating mana to sacrifice to draw a card. And after this, I think that James is likely just going to be forced to go ahead and pass the turn over to Sam here. I think his play here is going to be to discard a card to Yawgmoth, and then just shrink the Tarmogoyf increasingly. Now we saw Sam just go ahead and end step, activate the Scavenging Ooze, eat a Birds of Paradise to get an additional power and an additional life there. James could have taken that opportunity to try and tax Sam a little bit, but of course he did not do so. Let's see, didn't get a catch at what Sam drew for the turn. Looks like he is going to cycle the Nurturing Peatland now. It's Bloodbraid Elf, I believe, off the top here for Sam. Up to 8 now. His life total certainly less under duress now, and now he's more just worried about getting comboed out here by James. James is down to 11? Is that right? How did he take that much damage on the last turn? Didn't he start that turn at 21? I don't think there's any way he could be at 11. He didn't sacrifice 10 creatures last turn, right? Oh, he started the turn at 14. Got it. Scoo's got in there. This makes sense. Okay, so here we go. Here come the attacks. So Scavenging Ooze, obviously huge. And looks like Yawgmoth's got a pretty easy block here on Tarmogoyf. That'll end up proliferating that. And then James is going to put the Young Wolf in front of the Scavenging Ooze. I assume that we'll see James just go ahead and sacrifice the Young Wolf here instead of letting it just die to Scavenging Ooze. I can't imagine that isn't where we're going to be. Interesting to see Sam just go ahead and attack here instead of casting the Bloodbraid Elf, perhaps worried about tapping too low on Scavenging Ooze activations. So he could end up just not deploying the Bloodbraid Elf and just leaving up as many Scavenging Ooze activations as he possibly can. Though I think I disagree with this theory in general. I think there's a lot of really good hits in our deck. Anything that kills Yawgmoth is pretty much lights out. So here comes Sacrifice Young Wolf. We'll go ahead and try and put a -1/-1 counter on the Scavenging Ooze. Shrink it down a little bit, you know. And then James will fall down to 10 as he finds Geralf's Messenger off the top. James certainly would be able to get lethal through here if that Scavenging Ooze weren't still on the battlefield. And it looks like he is going to just elect to hold the Bloodbraid Elf, not willing to put that one, not willing to tap too low here for fear of dying to the Yawgmoth combos. Strangleroot Geist, the draw here now for James. James a little pinched on mana now since he's sacrificed all of his Birds of Paradise. Of course, he had all the lands in the world before, and now has spells and can't cast them all. A little bit of a green, black going on in James's hand right now. Yeah. Twilight Mire's really doing its job, I tell you what. I've never seen a deck with 4 Twilight Mire in it before, but boy is this the one for it, I think. Props to whoever decided that 4 Twilight Mire was the way to go here with this deck, because I certainly would have never thought about that were I building this deck, but I definitely agree that it seems very necessary. Alright, so Geralf's Messenger enters the battlefield. Sam down to 7. I expect that we'll see an attack for 2 here from Yawgmoth, as James not willing to block with the 2/4. Means that he will attack with it, put Sam down to 5. Sam ought to be a little concerned with his life total here, but he's got a couple mana to exile creatures with to gain some of it back. James with a nice chump blocker in the form of Young Wolf here on standby, although this Bloodbraid Elf could be a bit of a surprise to James here, especially if it finds a removal spell and gets to point it at the Young Wolf. James could find himself dead this turn. We'll have to see how things go, as I believe a land was the draw for turn from Sam, and I think he's going to want to reconsider how he taps his mana here. He's going to go ahead and play his land for turn first. And then, yep, here comes the Bloodbraid Elf. Bloodbraid Elf Cascade trigger. This is a big Cascade. Thoughtseize the hit. Gonna go ahead and decline to cast that one. Makes sense to me. Oh, just an attack with Bloodbraid Elf. Interesting. I think he needs to get aggressive here. I really think he's supposed to attack with the Scavenging Ooze as well, but it's definitely risky if he does so. So yeah, here comes this attack. I certainly prefer attack with just Scavenging Ooze to attack with just Bloodbraid Elf. But yeah, James makes the obvious block here. Gonna block the Scavenging Ooze, sacrifice it to Yawgmoth. He'll put a -1/-1 counter on the Bloodbraid Elf. This means that James is going to take 3 points of damage this turn, 2 from the Bloodbraid Elf, 1 from paying a life to sacrificing from Yawgmoth. He'll draw a card. I tell you what, Yawgmoth has looked pretty good this game, though. I must say that. Alright, James at 7 now. Sam at 6. James with 5 power on board. Once Upon a Time was the draw step here for James, I believe. I think he has a Strangleroot Geist in his hand as well. And Sam with only the ability to gain 1 life this turn, because the Verdant Catacombs he has untapped will cost him a life to be able to do it, means that I think that Sam is just dead here. So this is an attack for 5, 6, 7. Oh, I guess not. This is gonna put Sam down to a single-digit HP. This is going to put Sam down to 1, I believe, from this attack. Oh boy. But now James should be able to force through the combo. Oh man, can he? Wait, this is really hard. So, because Sam's only green source here is Verdant Catacombs, now James mostly has the green light. Well, now James just have the green light. He can just sacrifice the Drolf's Messenger and just have it come back, because Sam can't exile it because his only land is a Verdant Catacombs, because Sam ended up leaving a swamp untapped instead of a potential green mana here, and that's gonna end up costing him big time, assuming that James sees it. All he has to do is sacrifice Drolf's Messenger right now, because Sam only has Verdant Catacombs as his green source and is at 1 life, so he can't sacrifice it here. We'll have to see if James actually finds it. Yep, looks like he has found it. Still thinking. Sam must be really sweating his shoes. Gonna start by sacrificing the Strangleroot Geist, Undying trigger. That'll resolve. It'll come back with a +1/+1 counter on it. Put a -1/-1 counter on the Bloodbraid Elf. There's another Strangleroot Geist. James really needs to sacrifice this Drolf's Messenger before his opponent untaps. There it is. And yep, that is lethal. It took James a while to see it there, I think, but he eventually saw it. So, fair play. Got there eventually. So that was a pretty exciting game. So let's take a look at these sideboards here for both of these players. Over with Sam on Jund, we got 1 Collective Brutality, 1 Alpine Moon, 2 copies of Fulminator Mage, 2 Anger of the Gods. Oh, excuse me. I assume this is 3 copies of Anger of the Gods. 1 Liliana Last Hope, 2 Plague Engineer, 1 Huntmaster of the Fells, and 2 Extirpate. So, cards that stand out to me here. The Extirpates could be pretty good with Split Second. Obviously, they have the ability to potentially get Yawgmoth out of his deck if you can Thoughtseize them, as well as get rid of cards like, as well as just remove, undying creatures at any given point. Anger of the Gods seems excellent. Sweep the board, exile everything. I'm all for that. And the Liliana Last Hope seems pretty good as well. And I could be convinced of the Plague Engineers. I'd have to take a closer look at the actual creature types for this green-black Yawgmoth deck. But my inclination is, you've got Young Wolf, you've got Strangleroot Geist that are both pretty clean hits that you're just going to mostly want to Plague Engineer. You're only going to get the first half of their body, but that's still a very big deal because it prevents the combo from going off, and that strikes me as pretty reasonable. Let's take a look at James's sideboard with this green-black Yawgmoth deck. He's got 1 Thrashing Brontodon, 2 copies of Shifting Ceratops, 2 Damping Sphere, 1 Yixilid Jailer, 1 Plague Engineer, 2 Thoughtseize, 1 Obstinate Baloth, 1 Abrupt Decay, 1 Assassin Trophy, 1 Kitchen Finks, 1 Phyrexian Revoker, and 1 Reclamation Sage. So this one's a little bit harder. I like the Obstinate Baloth quite a bit. That one seems very good. Geez. Other than that, I suppose the Phyrexian Revoker strikes me as good. And I think Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy probably need to come in as well after seeing those Scavenging Oozes. And there's just a lot of CMC 3 or so permanents that cause problems in Jund. So I quite enjoy the Abrupt Decay, the Assassin's Trophy, the Phyrexian Revoker, and the Obstinate Baloth. But I think that's probably where I'd leave it if I were James. I'm not really certain what he's supposed to take out of the deck. Like I said, have yet to play a game with it. My inclination is that we can just go ahead and cut some of our less impactful mainboard cards. Young Wolf comes to mind. Birds of Paradise is always a totally reasonable cut against decks like Jund, where they're really just trying to strip you of resources, and drawing a Birds of Paradise late in the game can end up being a real brick, whereas, you just want to make sure you hit your land drops. You'd much rather have a land than a Birds of Paradise against Jund, because your land can't get lightning bolted, and drawing a land later on in the game is certainly worse than Birds of Paradise, and I suppose actually quite a bit worse than Birds of Paradise if you have a Yawgmoth in play, but we'll have to see how James elects to sideboard. I don't think you want to take out all of your Birds of Paradise, for example. You definitely want to leave some acceleration in. Obviously, James's main plan here is to cast a 4-mana threat, and just casting a 4-mana threat on turn 4 is a little bit slow in Modern, even with the potential bans coming into the format to try and slow things down, make it a little more reasonable. Although, admittedly, the Urza deck, is I suppose traditionally fair Magic, although it is a little bit absurd how good it is. Cryptic Command can't be unfair, right, guys? Like, come on, it's Cryptic Command. How can any deck playing Archmage's Charm be unfair? That just doesn't make any sense, right? Alright, looks like players have decided on their configuration for game number 2 here, so gonna get a look here. That was an impressive showing for Green Black Yawgmoth. I'm pretty happy after seeing that game with the deck. That game looked very hard. Like, it looked like he was very, very far behind, and then he just put a Yawgmoth into play, and then sort of kind of just won, even through a hate piece that was on the board, and he would have won pretty much instantly had Sam not had that Scavenging Ooze in place. So things got a little bit hard, but I enjoyed watching the Yawgmoth deck work that game. Excuse me. I think it's time for a little water. All right. Looks like both players keeping a 7-card hand here. Sam starting things off with a tapped Blood Crypt. James will follow suit here with a fetch land that'll undoubtedly be finding a tapped Overgrown Tomb at the end of the turn here for James. Here comes Thoughtseize. I assume that this one was off the top, given that we were seeing it on turn 2 as opposed to turn 1. Looking at a hand of Strangleroot Geist, Wall of Roots. I'm not certain the one under the Wall of Roots Giraffe Messenger, Blood Artist, and a couple of lands. Oh, it's Court of Calling, excuse me. Court of Calling is the card under Strangleroot, or under the Wall of Roots. James confused me there with the different art Court of Calling last game, so... Alright, looks like Giraffe's Messenger going to go ahead and hit the bin here. Not even scared of this Strangleroot Geist in James's hand. Bold play, bold maneuver here. We'll have to see how he manages to deal with that. I see a Liliana, a Fatal Push, Renin 6 in hand for Sam. So it looks like he's got plenty of ways to deal with Strangleroot Geist, although it having Undying means that looks like it's going to be pretty problematic, actually. All right. So let's take a Twilight Mire, and then looks like James just going to settle for Wall of Roots this turn. Definitely a reasonable choice here, not electing to start the beats with Strangleroot Geist just yet. Develop the mana a little bit first. All of this makes sense to me. Of course, Wall of Roots provides you an additional green mana every turn with the cost of a single -1/-1 counter, although I expect that will be going away. No, looks like Sam's going to go ahead and plus, so James will discard the extra copy of Wall of Roots. I'm a little surprised. I think I might have minus that Liliana, though admittedly I take that back. We do know about this Strangleroot Geist, and getting my Liliana just sniped down by a Strangleroot Geist seems rather unappealing. Speaking of Strangleroot Geist, here it comes. 2 damage at the Liliana, put her down to 2. We'll see if James wants to ramp out another Wall of Roots. He does. And then he'll ship the turn back on over to Sam. Wall of Roots, of course, very powerful, and it's been a hot minute since we've seen Wall of Roots in Modern. It's certainly one of those cards that is absolutely powerful enough for the format, assuming you can find the right shell for it. And being able to just put a counter on it, add a green mana is one of the better dorks because it's just so effective at blocking. And it's not a 1 mana dork, which is really the problem with it. And it's an interesting inclusion in this deck, but it looks like the deck just wanted to be able to play Yawgmoth on turn 3 more consistently. And so it ended up just, slapping some Wall of Roots in its deck. Obviously, it could have elected to play something like Noble Hierarch instead. They have four Birds of Paradise as their 1 mana accelerants. So, and now we'll see an end step Court of Calling here from James. That'll leave him with no cards in hand as he goes ahead and chords for Young Wolf here. It looks like James is just fully accepting plan mediocre beats here and just try and get there. That's a reasonable plan, I suppose, as he, just wants to go ahead and trade in the Court of Calling here for a reasonable creature. And here, once again, we find ourselves in a position of watching mediocre beats attempt to take down Jun's incredibly high-value planeswalkers. Liliana and Renin 6 both in play now. Obviously, these two are incredibly powerful when put onto the same battlefield together. Now we'll see some attacks. Looks like a lethal attack at the Liliana, and 1 damage going to Renin 6. Here's Nurturing Peatland for James. He'll sacrifice now, take a draw off the top. I agree with this. He can cast pretty much any spell, and, well, that spell is Birds of Paradise, so I'm going to go ahead and put that one into play. Verdant Catacombs will hit the graveyard here. Sam loses a life. Let's see what he manages to find. Looks like it'll just be a tapped Stomping Ground. Nothing crazy here. And now both players are pretty well aware what's going on here. James is really just waiting for any look at Yawgmoth to be able to really run away with the game because he does have the 2 Undying creatures in play already. And Sam's just going to try and lock the game up with value permanence, before any of that is allowed to happen. So, speaking of value permanents, here comes Bloodbraid Elf. Looks like going to go ahead and take down a Birds of Paradise with an Abrupt Decay. Definitely an interesting choice. And we'll see if he wants to do any attacking. I expect the Bloodbraid Elf is just going to hang out here on defense, as Strangleroot Guy still has a reasonable attack, but Young Wolf gets brick-walled by it pretty effectively. And of course, looks like Sam's just going to go ahead and minus on the Strangleroot Guy. So I quite like this play, actually. Now that means that James really doesn't have any attacks at all unless he wants to permanently trade that Strangleroot Geist for the Bloodbraid Elf, which if he does would end up leaving him unable to combo with the Yawgmoth, unless of course he were to draw another copy of Strangleroot Geist. So now this allows him to kill the Renin 6, and he ends up getting to get in for a single point of damage with that Young Wolf at Salmon. Yeah, now these Undying creatures are kind of just serving into Sam, and he's really struggling to beat all of these creatures that just come back over and over again. His deck's just full of removal spells and ways to deal with creatures, but ways to deal with creatures is not a particularly effective plan against creatures that just come back every turn. I mean, I'm thinking, sort of similar to Dredge or whatever, how you can try to, Fatal Push a Prized Amalgam, but it's really just a hopeless endeavor. And, at least there's a little bit more finality with these Undying creatures where they're only going to come back a single time, but it's still pretty rough. All right. Now we're going to take another draw step here from James. Every single draw step from James is very threatening, as, oh boy, yep. Here's Eldritch Evolution from James, as he's going to go ahead and sacrifice the Strangleroot Geist. He'll then bring it back from the graveyard with Undying, and now, assuming that Sam doesn't have anything going on in his hand, we get to see the actual combo here. As James is going to get to pay 1 life and draw 1 card as many times as he wants. Obviously, it's pretty much Yawgmoth's Bargain. We've done all of this work to assemble Yawgmoth's Bargain, basically. So, James is looking for a potentially a Blood Artist or a copy of Geralf's Messenger here to be able to kill his opponent. I do believe, however, he's probably supposed to attack before doing this. So now we'll see him begin cycling through everything. There's a Court of Calling. I think that the Blood Artist is already out of his deck, otherwise that would be lethal. However, Court of Calling should be able to just find a Geralf's Messenger here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is Court of Calling for 3. This will find Geralf's Messenger, and then this essentially allows you to pay 1 life or pay 2 life to deal 2 damage. So if your life total is higher than your opponent's, then you'll be able to just kill them by sacrificing Geralf's Messenger, sacrificing your other Undying creature, and you. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the combo, here's how it works. You have 2 creatures with Undying in play. You sacrifice the first one. You put a -1/-1 counter on anything. The first creature comes back with a +1/+1 counter. You draw a card. You then sacrifice the other Undying creature, and you put a -1/-1 counter on the first Undying creature so that the counters cancel out and nullify. And then you draw a card, and then the second Undying creature comes back with a +1/+1 counter on it. Then you sacrifice the first one, draw a card, put a -1/-1 counter on the second one, repeat as many times as you would like to pay 1 life, and you essentially pay 1 life to draw 1 card. Then, as soon as you have a Geralf's Messenger in play, you can do the same thing, but every time you pay 2 damage, you take 2 life. Your opponent also loses 2 damage because the Geralf's Messenger re-enters the battlefield. So, essentially, if your life total is higher than your opponent's, you end up just killing them. But you do have to have a higher life total than your opponent's. Obviously, if you have a Blood Artist, you just truly go infinite. But that is the combo here, so that's why we saw Sam pick up his cards. So that was pretty sweet. I was pretty impressed with that one. So I'm definitely gonna have to keep this deck on my mind. And let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for the evening, Tabletop. Tabletop is the best board game apparel clothing brand in the business. If you're into board games and if you're into clothes, Tabletop is the place for you. You should look no further. They have excellent quality shirts, hoodies, all that type of stuff, and honestly, they're just really cool, really well designed, very high quality. So thank you so much to Tabletop for supporting the stream. We wouldn't be able to do all this without you guys. So with that, I'm gonna leave you with some capacity. We'll be back for the third and final round of Modern here very, very shortly, so make sure you guys don't go anywhere. Alrighty, as promised, we're back here pretty quick with round number 3. Here we got Blue-White Control, otherwise known as Pioneer Pile, versus Bryant on Devoted Druid. So, looks like we're starting things off with Once Upon a Time. He'll take Vizier of Remedies to start things off. And then we've got, oh my, Simian Spirit Guide into Devoted Druid. Now we'll see what this follow-up is. I think Bryant might be missing a mana here to actually be able to cast the Vizier of Remedies. Looks like he's going to go ahead and cast Finale of Devastation for 1. I expect that this will be getting a Noble Hierarch to ensure that he has the ability to cast this Vizier of Remedies on his next turn. This is going to force Dylan into interaction, well, pretty much immediately here. Looks like still thinking on the find here with the Finale of Devastation. Could be Giver of Runes, of course. Giver of Runes is certainly an option he has available to him. Alright, so looks like he's pulled the Giver of Runes to the front here. Interesting choice here. Looks like he is going to take Giver of Runes and then go ahead and ship the turn back over to Dylan. Ooh, apparently there's a deck problem. Oh, we saw Bryant kind of grab his sideboard here momentarily. It looks like this looks like a somewhat strange problem here going on. The Druid does not have haste. The Druid was played on turn 1 from Simeon's Spirit Guide. Now, he played it last turn, though. He is, it appears, missing his land drop for turn number 2. So he was on the play this game and is missing land for turn number 2 here. Though he does have this Finale of Devastation to theoretically go find Noble Hierarch. But I believe that is what the deck issue is here. But it should be a relatively clean fix here. Obviously, we're playing at regular rules enforcement level. The problem here was that the Noble Hierarch in his deck was actually accidentally left on the table after last round. So definitely a problem that doesn't happen too often, but happened here. So now we'll see Bryant has enough mana to cast his Noble Hierarch here, cast his Vizier of Remedies this turn. Now he just needs a lethal threat to go along with it. So here is Vizier of Remedies. He now has infinite mana. He's got a white land here in his hand, I believe, so he can even Ladmary's Call for lethal here. And unless Dylan has a 2-mana interaction here, which I think we would have seen interaction by now, did he have any? I think that he is just very dead. He's gonna get killed on turn number 3 here, which admittedly, if Bryant had a land, I believe he would have gotten killed on turn number 2 here. Is Bryant fetching a green-blue land here? Why aren't we fetching white mana and trying to kill our opponent? This seems a little questionable to me. I think we just want the white mana here. Yeah, we don't have white mana. We really need white mana. Get the white mana here. Cast our Ladmary's Call. Dylan, I think, just sitting here hoping his opponent does not have it. Here is Ladmary's Call. And, yeah, this is going to just find Walking Ballista. And, yeah, Walking Ballista is going to end up killing Dylan here. He's got the infinite mana. He's got the combo. So, that'll be a quick game number 1 here. Censor it. Censor that. Yeah, he had the censor up. Dylan had censor up, but he never had to tap out into force spike range. So that means that is a quick game number 1 here in favor of Bryant. Let's take a look at the sideboards here for both players. Bryant has 3 Veil of Summers, 4 Path to Exile, 1 Weather the Storm, 3 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 Disdainful Stroke, and 2 Negates. So we're playing against Blue-White Control. The Veil of Summers seem great. The Teferi Time Ravelers seem even better, and the Negates seem almost the best. All of those cards just seem excellent to me. I think we got 8 cards coming in. It seems like a pretty clean 8 to me. Probably going to cut our Simeon Spirit Guides. Those don't seem like really the plan here. We don't really want to be just jamming our Druids into early counterspells and early interaction, which our opponent's certainly going to have. So I definitely... I think those can come out, as well as some of our less impactful cards. Something like Noble Hierarch seems relatively low impact to me, as well as we can probably trim on some of the more expensive sorceries like Finale of Devastation. Over on Dylan's side, we've got 1 Pithing Needle, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Dovin's Veto, 2 Aether Gust, 1 Elspeth's Sun's Champion, 2 Rest in Peace, 1 Sphinx of the Final Word, 2 Nyx's Fleece Ram, and 2 Lyra Dawnbringer. So, from Dylan, God, I don't like any of this. So the 2 Aether Gusts are certainly the best cards here. Look at that vest. Yeah, Dylan's rocking the vest today for sure. So yeah, I think we want Aether Gust. And that's pretty much it. Like from Dylan's side, I like the Aether Gust. The mystical disputes are pretty reasonable. If you just want more counter spells, your opponent's almost certainly going to be bringing in some form of blue interaction. You did see your opponent put a breeding pool into play for a moment, so you're gonna have to deal with blue spells, and it's pretty commonplace for them to have blue spells nowadays, especially while Oko's still legal. Although I bet that will change relatively soon. Pithing Needle's reasonable. I don't think it's phenomenal or anything. I mean, you can't shut off Druid, unfortunately, with Pithing Needle. So you can't shut off Infinite Mana, though you can shut off Walking Ballista, which is pretty nice. I believe Pithing Needle says you can... it stops it unless it's a mana ability. Oh, you're right. It turns off the untap, of course. Yeah. So certainly want Pithing Needle then. I got too caught up on the difference between Pithing Needle and Phyrexian Revoker being the like one's a mana ability, one's a land. Where you can't name Druid because it's a mana ability, and yeah, well, here's Pithing Needle naming Devoted Druid, so that's definitely going to be a pretty big problem for Bryant. We'll see how he decides to deal with that. Of course, it is naming Devoted Druid. This is going to put Bryant pretty cleanly on plan beatdown, I think. All right, so Once Upon a Time. Take a look at the top 5 here for Bryant. He's still got that Simian Spirit Guide. All right, and it looks like Ranger Captain of Eos will be the find for Bryant. This seems like one of the better cards in the matchup, especially after board here. It's going to allow him to, basically turn off counterspells, turn off interaction on combo turns, although the combo turn aspect is going to be significantly more difficult given the state of things, so we'll have to see how it goes from here. And yes, Pithing Needle is naming Devoted Druid for everyone at home, most certainly. Alright, here comes Giver of Runes on the first turn of the game here for Bryant. Certainly an effective threat, as a Glacial Fortress will enter the battlefield untapped here for Dylan. Looks like he's got an Absorb in his hand, as well as other assorted cards. Here comes that Hallowed Fountain that Bryant was looking for. I assume that Dylan just played his land and shipped the turn back. Blue-Eye Control has a sort of an allergic reaction to playing cards on its own turn, so he'll go ahead and draw a card. Vizier of Remedies in his hand, Simian Spirit Guide as well. We talked about that one a little bit. I think I see a Finale of Devastation and Eternal Witness in hand as well. Eternal Witness, certainly one of the better ones in this matchup. Here's an attack for 1 with Giver of Runes. Looks like Dylan just willing to take that point. And then I think that Bryant just shipped the turn back over to Dylan, so no 2-mana play here. Not willing to exile a Simian Spirit Guide to make a play early here either, so Dylan will cycle an Irrigated Farmland, then he's just going to go ahead and ship the turn back. Bryant going to attempt to use Eladamri's Call. That will not resolve, as Horizon Canopy is the draw. Dylan goes back up to 20 off of an Absorb. Ranger Captain of Eos strikes me as the best option here while Dylan is tapped out. Get yourself a nice 3-3 onto the battlefield. It's going to be one that's hard to beat. The 3-3 gets to go find a creature. I wonder what it will be. Likely another copy of Giver of Runes. Seems better than Noble Hierarch, but looks like Bryant disagrees, as Noble Hierarch is the find. Here comes Jace, Architect of Thought from Dylan. All right, now we've got Forest off the top here. Interestingly enough, Dylan elected to plus the Jace, Architect of Thought. It's reasonable to me. Obviously, the card is going to save you a little bit of life, and it's mostly just going to end up getting hit a couple times, especially because you know about that Noble Hierarch. So all of these things are fine, but I think I probably just would have cashed my Jason for a mini Factor Fiction plus, gain 4, which is certainly what it would have been. I think I'm pretty happy with that mode, because this is essentially... I suppose that this is going to be the same thing, but a little bit delayed. Assuming that Dylan is willing to do that. It allows him to get some extra information and get the Factor Fiction off when he untaps. So, assuming everything it plays face up, then this should just all go as planned. And yep, sure enough, Jace down to 2. He'll take an untap now. I expect that we'll see Jace get -2 this turn. Just accept that Jace gained us 4 life. But it looks like Dylan's going to elect that Jace is going to gain him 8 life instead of ever doing anything Factor Fiction-y. Of course, he could have some way to protect his Jace, so like a Supreme Verdict. Supreme Verdict, of course, negate. Does not look like it's any good here. And I think that means that this whole board of dudes is going to be going away. Bryant will sacrifice the Ranger Captain in response to make it so that Dylan can't follow up with any ops or anything like that on this turn, but all things considered, I think that we're just going to have to see this one happen. I think Dylan is pretty firmly pulling ahead here, and certainly I definitely prefer this line, given Dylan's hand contains Supreme Verdict with the Jace Architect of Thought, so keep it alive for a turn and then wipe the board and end up with the active Planeswalker at the end of it is one of the classic plays out of these blue-white control decks. So now we'll see how Bryant decides to rebuild. Of course, the Ranger Captain of Eos ended up finding that Noble Hierarch, so only really 2 creatures effectively hitting the bin there. Has Duskwatch Recruiter, the play now for Dylan, or for Bryant, Jace continues going up, no down ticks yet, no Factor Fictions, tapped Hallowed Fountain. Dylan sends the turn back over to Bryant. Bryant now is going to transform the Duskwatch Recruiter, no activate in response, so he's going to elect to keep all of his mana available. I think I would have liked to have seen an activation in response there, if I'm being honest, but we'll see what he elects to do now. I think I like starting my turn with attack Jace. He agrees. Azorius Charm, going to attempt to put Crawling Horde Howler back on top of Bryant's library. That'll get negated. And Aether Gust will now certainly put the card either on the top or the bottom of Bryant's library. I assume it's going on top. And I agree with this decision from Bryant. And now I assume that we're just going to have Bryant's turn gets sent back over onto Dylan. He already played this Temple Garden tapped earlier in the turn, which I can't say I'm a huge fan of. Had he just waited a little bit longer, he would have known that now he would have liked to have shocked in the Temple Garden, and then he would have been able to play Eternal Witness on his turn. And here's Dylan's turn. He elected to plus the Jace, and instead of Factor Fictioning. This probably tells Bryant that he drew a pretty good card this turn, because I think if Dylan had just drawn like a land, he probably would have been prompted into -2ing that Jace to try and look for action. So I think Bryant's probably got the sirens here up in his head, because I certainly would have -2'd my Jace most of the time here. And yeah, here's a cast out. It's going to go ahead and exile that Duskwatch Recruiter. Bryant's going to go ahead and activate it in response. He'll look at the top 3 cards, put a creature into his hand. I said Vizier of Remedies. Vizier of Remedies will be the selection. Jace, continuing to go up. Is Dylan working towards an ultimate with this Jace? The ultimate doesn't seem particularly relevant at all, so, I mean, what are you going to find out of Bryant's deck with it? A 0/0 Walking Ballista? Like, Duskwatch Recruiter? I suppose Shalai, Voice of Plenty, is the best card by quite a large margin. Alright, so now back over to Bryant here. As Dylan once again continuing to just send that Jace up, up, up. Here comes Eternal Witness. I expect that this will prompt a counterspell from Dylan, if he has one. But it looks like he does not. I think that Ranger Captain of Eos seems the obvious choice here for Bryant, but looks like he's going to go with the Negate. Can't say I hate this decision. Negate, certainly quite good. Going to allow him to play quite a little bit more with Dylan on the stack, of course. Jace continues going up. Still no Factor Fiction piles being made for Dylan. Man, I really want to see some Factor Fiction piles get made at some point. You know, I think there were 2 separate turns where Dylan had a board where Bryant didn't have any creatures on it, so he wasn't going to get to attack, and I would have loved to have instead been minusing my Jace on those 2 turns, so. Alright, here comes a Devoted Druid. Of course, remember, he is unable to activate the untap ability of Devoted Druid, so no infinite mana while the Pithing Needle's in play. Alright, here's one more uptick from Jace. Of course, the Eternal Witness keeping that Jace in check. It's never going to hit an ultimate while that's going on. So Jace essentially being used to fog this Eternal Witness. Here comes a Once Upon a Time on end step from Bryant. Looks like this will resolve. He'll look at the top 5, see if he can find a relevant creature. Looks like Temple Garden is the pick, so a whiff on relevant creatures, unfortunately. And then he'll go ahead and draw a card for turn. Walking Ballista was the hit. After he is drawn, Dylan's just going to go ahead and use this opportunity to crack his Field of Ruin, remove that breeding pool from Bryant's arsenal. He's got to be running relatively low on basics. These decks not known for their high quantity of basics. They prefer never not having the colors they need to having a plethora of basics in their deck, but he certainly has at least one for us to go and find, so not going to be getting strip mined anytime soon. Here comes that Temple Garden that he found off the Once Upon a Time Vizier. Finale of Devastation. Bryant could just jam a Finale for 4 here. Try and go find a Shalai. It's a little risky against the card Supreme Verdict, and obviously you're just jamming into a counterspell. Your opponent has shown you Censor in the last game, so you've got to be a little worried about that. Here comes an attack for 1 at Jace. Jace will go back down. And yeah, here comes Finale. This looks like Finale for 3 to me. Just going to find, presumably, Eternal Witness. Looks like Dylan going to go ahead and opt in response. That'll go on the bottom. Then that will resolve. I believe Dylan certainly would have countered that if he could. I expect that we're going to see an Eternal Witness here, and then just go ahead and pick the Finale of Devastation right back up. This is an excellent sequence of play against blue-white control. Definitely one of the main plans is that you're usually going to get a full card or nearly that worth of value out of a 2-1 against blue-white control. So essentially just spending 5 mana to free roll a 2-1 into play is definitely very good. So here's another land from Dylan. Looks like Supreme Verdict mana to me, and it is. Supreme Verdict going to take down the things. I do not believe Bryant has a Reclamation Sage in his list, correct? So I think we're just dealing with Pithing Needle is the plan. I think we're on plan mediocre beats here from Bryant's side. As Vizier of Remedies enters play, and yeah, that's certainly as mediocre as it gets. Yeah, Reclamation Sage would have been very good. Here comes a Negate to fight, and Negate to fight over to Fairy, Absorb as backup, and then Veil of Summer as a complete blowout here. As per usual, Veil of Summer is completely insane. Another Finale of Devastation still in hand for Bryant, of course, from that Eternal Witness. I expect that we're going to see that one get fired off on this turn now that Dylan has no cards in hand. Bryant just says go? Dylan had no cards in hand. Now's the time, man. You got to cast your spells when the blue-white control player doesn't have cards in their hand. Dylan's just forced to Supreme Verdict a simple 2-1 that's essentially a 1-1 because of Jace, but here comes Ledmary's Call. Looks like Walking Ballista pulled to the front here. I certainly agree. And yes, Walking Ballista, it will be, as Bryant goes ahead and finds this one. He's got lots of mana, and Walking Ballista is absolutely a card that can just win you a game. Dylan threw by never minusing Jace. I kind of agree, to be honest. I definitely agree with you. I think not minusing Jace ever is certainly not where Dylan wanted to be. I mean, Jace's best ability is -2. It's not close. You really want to be minusing your Jace. Interesting choice here from Bryant. He just cast a Ballista for 2 instead of just casting it for the full 4. And now we see Jace -2. Goes ahead, puts the Censor in Dylan's hand. He's going to put the 2 lands on the bottom. Dylan's just going to cycle that Censor right away. So -2. Jace will essentially be a redraw here. End step, we'll see Bryant crack his Misty Rainforest. He'll go get his Windswept Heath, excuse me. He'll go get a tapped Breeding Pool. I really want to get that untapped if I'm Bryant and put a counter on my Walking Ballista. Yeah, it looks like he realized that here, so he'll pay the 2 life to put a 1/1 counter on his Walking Ballista. Certainly worthwhile. And I think that we're going to see Bryant go ahead and take down this Jace on this turn here. He's got plenty of mana to be able to, pump up a Walking Ballista and send it at the Jace. And, if we need to remove a counter at the end of the day to do so, it seems totally fine. Disdainful Stroke is in hand for Bryant as well. And he's still got that Finale of Devastation from long ago. Bryant giving a think towards his play for the turn. Of course, you can Finale of Devastation and Eternal Witness back basically indefinitely, because the Eternal Witnesses are in your graveyard. So, of course, Finale of Devastation, one of those spells. And Absorb, just going to go ahead and take down the Finale of Devastation. So that's going to be that. Walking Ballista will get sent at Jace. I'll be a little surprised if we don't see a minus take out the Jace, but no, it looks like looks like a little bit of confusion here. Looks like a little bit of confusion as Dylan did not remove, or it looks like, okay, so here Jace went to 5 last turn, so then this is an attack, and then Dylan will minus, and then Bryant will shoot it down. So here comes Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. That will get Disdainful Stroked. Now, another copy of Finale of Devastation here in hand for Bryant. Here's an attack with Walking Ballista. It doesn't look particularly large. I think Bryant should just spend this turn pumping his Walking Ballista potentially, but it looks like he's going to go ahead and attempt to get his 2/1 farm back online here with Eternal Witness, and then Eternal Witness can get his Finale of Devastation back. We'll see if he decides anything else is going to be the play. I'd be a little surprised. I think the 2/1 farm is just a little too valuable here against blue-white controls. In fact, that is what it will be. Opt on the main phase here for Dylan as he'll dig 1 card deeper. Here's Castle Vantress. As far as lands go, that one's a pretty good one. that one's going to allow him to do some pretty reasonable things. And looks like end of turn Bryant's just going to exile a Simian Spirit Guide to put a 1/1 counter on its Walking Ballista. I actually certainly agree with this play. That one seems pretty good to me. So now we're going to go to combat. This is absolutely no joke here. Amounts of damage. This is a lot of pressure from Bryant that he's going to be putting on Dylan. I think that Bryant's just going to spend all of his mana every turn, pretty much, putting counters on Walking Ballista for the rest of the game. Although I think this finale is probably going to attempt to get back the other Eternal Witness in Bryant's graveyard. So, he's going to be able to put one counter on Walking Ballista and also, cast a finale for 3. So here comes that finale for 3. He'll get the Eternal Witness, I presume. Ooh, no, he gets Ranger Captain of Eos this time. So effectively shutting off the 1/1 farm here from Bryant. He's opting out of it. He elects not to go find a 1-mana creature with the Ranger Captain of Eos. That's certainly unfortunate. So here comes Bryant. He'll do 3 damage with his Walking Ballista, but now I thought Bryant was quite far ahead with the permanents he had, but Supreme Verdict off the top means that Dylan suddenly claws his way right back into this, and now he's one valuable Planeswalker away from being very far ahead. As he scries 2, both bottom. Upkeep, he'll scry 2 more. See if any of these are good enough to leave on top. Top. That's got to be dire news for Bryant. And then he passes the turn. Not too many things that could be, I don't think. And here comes Narset, Parter of Veils. You don't understand? What do you not understand there, Gavin? Ooh, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. That's a nice find. As now we're going to see Dylan start to pull away with this game. As Bryant's left with nothing relevant. Snapcaster Mage there. The draw from Dylan. That's a very good one, obviously. Dylan has a completely stacked graveyard. The no search on the Ranger Captain of Eos certainly just had to be a missed trigger of some sort. Interesting. You would have sacked the Ranger the turn he brought it back? I don't know. I think it's reasonable to sack Ranger the turn you bring it back, but I don't know. I also am pretty interested in just having the 3 power creature. It's not like we had lethal that turn, so sacking the 3/3, especially when your opponent just has a Castle Vantress, means that they're just very, very likely to have it on the next turn, But yeah, I agree. If you were not sacking it that turn, then why not bring back Witness? I agree. Yeah, I do agree with all of this. But yes, we are getting confirmation that yes, that was just a missed trigger on the Ranger Captain of Eos there. He just did forget to search for the 1-mana creature, so. Now I think that, Dylan is just very, very far ahead at this point. And I think we're probably going to see Dylan clean up game number 2 here with a whole lot of Supreme Verdicts, I think, is sort of the story. And yeah, that is going to do it there for game number 2, as we'll see a nice game number 3 here between Bryant and Dylan. I think a couple slight missteps here and there from both players, I think, that game, for what it's worth. But I thought Dylan was going to lose, and I thought it was going to be because he didn't minus his Jace, and then I thought Dylan was going to win, and then Dylan did eventually win, obviously. So maybe he had the 200 IQ play the entire time. So okay, so looks like both players just going ahead and shuffling back up here for game number 3. Of course, we'll see Bryant on the play, and I do believe that Bryant is going to be quite favored on the play here. Obviously, the Veils, Teferis, Disdainful Strokes, Negates, and whatnot, still very effective. The disdainful strokes seem somewhat questionable to me in general. I don't think they really do very much. You also think there was a line where Bryant keeps pumping Ballista every turn and bring back Ranger and sacking, so you can never get Wrathed and then win over the course of 3 turns. I definitely agree. It was going to be tough to bring Ranger Captain back every turn, because you don't actually have a way to infinitely loop the Ranger Captain. You only get one use out of it, unfortunately. Because every time, as soon as you don't finale for the Eternal Witness the one time, then the chain's over. You can't finale for... You don't get any more finales out of it, unfortunately, so... Alright, looks like a quick mulligan here from Bryant with his 7-card hand. Dylan takes a look at his 7. Can't get a good look at it from this angle. But it looks like he will be keeping it, so probably some good news for Dylan. Hoping that Bryant doesn't have a particularly insane hand here to be able to win this game. This one looks a little bit better. We got a Once Upon a Time, Simeon's Spirit Guide somewhere in there as well. So I expect that we'll be starting things off with that Once Upon a Time. Bryant going to take a look at the top 5 here. I think his hand notably lacking the card Devoted Druid. So I think if he managed to find one of those, he'd be very happy. Otherwise, probably going to have to see a much more fair game here from Bryant, as we do see Horizon Canopy, the take here off of that Once Upon a Time, and then he'll lead things off with a Giver of Runes and send things back over to Dylan. Alrighty, here comes an island from Dylan. Vizier of Remedies, the draw. There is that Horizon Canopy. We'll see if he wants to do anything with it. I believe he's got a Ranger Captain of Eos in his hand as well. I assume that we'll see this Vizier of Remedies get played down this turn. Seems a little bit unnecessary to Simeon Spirit Guide into a Ranger Captain of Eos this turn. I think I just enjoy getting a 2-1 out there, saving the card. You might need the mana at some point later, and granted, the Simeon Spirit Guides do get much worse as game goes on, so if you want to get your Ranger Captain in under a counterspell, now's the time. Yeah, looks like he will go ahead and do it now. And then go ahead and find a 1-mana creature. Oh no. Did we forget to find a 1-mana creature again? Oh no. I believe that Bryant once more forgot to find his 1-mana creature. Very unfortunate. Alright, so here is Misty Rainforest for turn. Attack for 3. This is going to be a little bit difficult for Dylan to deal with in the short term, as he doesn't really have a way to deal with that Ranger Captain of Eos using targeted removal spells. Of course, he's going to be looking for cards like Supreme Verdict. Alrighty. And step, he'll go ahead and find himself a Breeding Pool tapped. Dylan with 3 mana. Pass the turn back, representing Absorb and the like. I think I see a Syncopate at the front of his hand as well. There's a Supreme Verdict in there as well. Here comes a Forest from Bryant. He'll attack for 3. Dylan, presumably, just take it down to 17. Or down to 14, excuse me. And then pass the turn back. I believe Dylan has Supreme Verdict, but just getting a little greedy here with it. All right, here comes Noble Hierarch. Looks like Bryant willing to dip his toes into that Wrath of God water, just a little bit at a time. Make sure it isn't too cold. Here's an attack for 4. He's trying to get his damage back, a little sooner rather than later. He's got Dylan at 12, so looks like Dylan must have shocked once, and that's very valuable damage. That Noble Hierarch essentially reduces the clock by by at least a turn. So here comes a tapped Hallowed Fountain, and yeah, Now the supreme verdict is going to come down. It's going to result in all of the creatures being destroyed, of course. Giver of Runes does not do anything against the supreme verdict. We'll see if Bryant wants to perhaps sacrifice a Horizon Canopy here on end step. In fact, he does. So now he'll draw 1 card off the canopy, 1 card for turn. Let's see what he manages to find now. Looks like Temple Garden, Devoted Druid in the hand as well. That's obviously quite a good one, as now he'll be able to send the turn back to Dylan. Devoted Druid, certainly very threatening. Dylan, however, plenty of counterspells, so the ability to keep a potential Vizier of Remedies off the board. At least that's the idea. But looks like he's just going to go ahead and cast out that Devoted Druid right now. So get that thing out of here. Bryant's going to go ahead and put 2 -1/-1 counters on it in response. Excuse me. In order to put it into the graveyard instead of under that cast out. Definitely a pretty heads-up play. Of course, Bryant does have the card Postmortem Lunge in his deck, so that one matters. Looks like he's going to go ahead and cast a Vizier of Remedies this turn. 2-1 obviously looks pretty relevant against an opponent who's at 9 life. Is 9 correct? I believed he was at 8, but I could be wrong. Due to an Exalted trigger from a Noble Hierarch, but I could be wrong. So here's Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This is definitely a problem for Bryant, as now Dylan's got his engine online to begin winning the game with. He's going to have to attempt to deal with the Teferi, and Dylan's main plan to win the game is just going to be, let my Teferi get to 8 and then -8 it. So it's pretty much impossible to lose a game after you've -8'd a Teferi. Bryant just went ahead and attacked Dylan for 2 and then shipped the turn back. That's incredibly passive in the face of a Teferi, to say the least. So we'll have to see if he has any instant speed effects, but usually when your opponent has such a problematic permanent as Teferi, you're usually forced to overextend into it, and that's really, one of the binds that the blue-white decks often try to put you in. So now we'll see Dylan just do a little bit of cycling on his turn and then untap those lands once again. Disdainful Stroke right on time for Bryant as he finds it this turn. And now he's looking to attempt to claw his way back into this game. He's going to try and cross this finish line before Dylan's able to -8 his Teferi, and it's not going to be easy given Dylan has an entire handful of cards here. Alrighty, here is an attack for 2 going at Dylan. Looks like Dylan content to just take it once again. He'll put himself down to 5, and then he'll draw a card at the start of his turn. Looks like he has a Censor in his hand, not willing to cycle the Censor. Definitely an interesting choice. Looks like Dylan going to go ahead just activate Castle Ardenvale on his main phase here. This is definitely an interesting decision. He's, certainly getting his mana's worth out of this Teferi. So he'll make himself a nice 1/1 human token. Teferi will go up to 7, then he'll untap 2 lands on end step, ship the turn right back over to Bryant. As now he's got a full hand, a 1/1 to block the Vizier of Remedies with. And Bryant, no spells to cast is certainly a problem. Like I said, just doing nothing in the face of this Teferi is really not a winning choice. And he says go once again. Obviously, you've got to be very scared of the things your opponent certainly is very likely to have, but doing nothing does not feel like winning to me here if I'm Bryant. So Dylan, that is an aggressive attack for 1. I do not like that attack for 1. Anyway, Dylan getting very anxious with this attack for 1 here, and it looks like Bryant's going to go ahead and end step cast and a Ladomri's Call. Dylan will respond by Aether Gusting it. Bryant responds with Veil of Summer, which will draw a card, but does not prevent the Aether Gust from resolving, as Aether Gust does not counter the spell. It merely puts it on top or bottom of its owner's library. And then Bryant's just going to go ahead and put it back on top. So Bryant does get a cycle out of his Eladomri's Call, but nothing more, as he will once again draw it for turn. Here's a forest. He must have found that off of the Veil of Summer. And now he's got Finale of Devastation, Eladomri's Call. Looks like he's just going to go ahead and try for this one during his main phase. He's got a Disdainful Stroke as the backup here, but Dylan just going to go ahead and let this one resolve. We'll see what Bryant elects to find. I assume it's going to be Devoted Druid. I think we're sort of in desperation mode here. And in fact, Devoted Druid is the find. So now Bryant solidly on plan. Hope my opponent does not have it. And Teferi is at 8. So, oh boy. Bryant needs a way to get this Teferi off the board. Here's a Syncopate for X is 2. Once Bryant goes to cast the Devoted Druid. And now, this means that Teferi is going to ultimate this turn. And I think that's going to be the end of the game. Almost certainly here. As once Teferi ultimates, I don't think I've ever seen anyone win a game through Teferi ultimate. Dylan plussed it again? He's insane. What is he doing? Oh my gosh. Alright, this is a PSA. Don't plus your Teferi at 8 loyalty. Just minus it. Just minus 8 your Teferi. I understand that you're going to draw cards and you're going to win the game. And like, great. I get that Dylan's hand is like insane. But if your opponent just draws some dumb uncounterable spell that you didn't think of and then kills your Teferi, you're going to feel so dumb. You're gonna feel so like it's never gonna happen. I get it, but just minus 8 your Teferi at 8. You can't lose the game when you have it in play. I see an Azorius Charm in Dylan's hand. That's enough for me to want to minus 8 my Teferi. That card says draw a card on it. If I have any card in my hand that says draw a card on it, and even if I don't, just draw a card, exile a permanent is so unbeatable. You just need to minus 8 your Teferi. Come on now. Yeah, he's got the Cycle Land in his hand too. Oh yeah, and these attacks for 2 are fine. They're aggressive, but like I don't like the attacks for 2 either. To be honest, they're so not necessary. Like that's just not how we're gonna win the game. You know, we're going to win the game with a Teferi Ultimate. At least that's my plan here. So, speaking of Teferi Ultimate, we now have made the Teferi Ultimate. So. Only 5 minutes left is reasonable, but once your opponent has no cards in their hand, or has no permanents in play, you can kill your opponent in, probably a minute or so, just with Activate Castle, Teferi plus Activate Castle or whatever. And granted, I was a proponent for making sure you don't activate, making it so you don't have that Teferi in play, but your opponent is going to die in the time limit for sure. And Dylan just played an Irrigated Farmland for turn. Like, he just doesn't even care. And, well, he managed to ultimate that Teferi, and now Bryant has 0 permanents. But, good old Bryant, he's fighting the good fight here. He's really doing his damnedest to try and win this one. But, of course, he will be unable to do so. And that means that we're going to see Dylan end up taking this match 2-1. So well played, Dylan. Managed to beat down on some Druid. It was not looking promising there after that first game when he got absolutely smoked by Druid after the turn 1 Devoted Druid off the Simian Spirit Guide. But things turned around quickly as we see this third game where he's... I believe that this is running it up. I believe I would classify this... Everything that's happening right now is running it up, so... Bryant reminds Dylan to make sure to plus his Teferi. Alright, and we'll see when Bryant has had enough here, but it looks like he's going through the motions and making Dylan kill him, which is certainly all in good fun here. I'm sure Bryant's sitting there smiling to himself as he gets absolutely annihilated and everything he's ever known or loved enters the exile zone. And now we'll see Dylan go ahead and double activate the Castle Ardenvale here to end up with 6 points of damage. Oko, Thief of Crowns in hand. Dylan aggressively scooping means that will be the end of this match and the end of the night here from Paradise Games. So a great match, well played to everyone, and thank you everyone out there for tuning in, keeping me company throughout the night. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little nasally, a little bit sick. There's there's a bug going around my place right now, so just been a little stuffed up, so hopefully that didn't bother anybody too much. But I would like to thank you all for coming out, keeping me company here tonight while I was alone in the booth. Had a good time, and I'd like to be the first to say, farewell, Oko, Thief of Crowns. You will not be missed. So looking forward to a new Modern format. We'll be exploring quite a bit of that next week, and if you're interested in catching any of the old Modern format, we've got some VODs up on YouTube. So that's going to be pretty nice. If you'd like to check those out, you can go ahead and search up the PodVod on YouTube. It'll be up later, and of course we have all of our old content on there. And if you're interested in checking us out, we stream every Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So let's go ahead and that'll be it for tonight. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back on Thursday, I believe. I don't think we're actually streaming this Thursday. If we are, I'll be back Thursday, but I'll certainly be back on Friday. So make sure you guys keep updated with the social medias and all that. You'll be sure to get all the updates. So thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you guys next time.
The bottom fell out of the clouds today, and the rain came down like a mirror. One big sheet and it shattered on the ground. Now it's 7 years of bad luck all over this town. It's collection time on all of your debts, and you can't get by just talking. Your smile don't work and your car don't start, and your doors ain't keeping you alone. No, not even if you lock them. No, not even if you lock them. When you're tapped into that bit of vein, just about anything feels good. The sun tried shining on a lost boy's eyes. They reflected oh so pretty, but it's cold behind them golden shores, and the sweet light wasn't nothing more than their own damn wishing, 'cause they just don't listen. Now wish on your candles, pray to your God, cry for your mama, put $1 on the bar. It feels like breathing, but the only good feeling ain't a gamble is a sin. So I think I'll play it safe and get a gin. I'll take the devil for a spin. When you're tapped into that bit of vein, just about anything feels good. For some the morning brings another day, but all it does for me is shine an ugly light around in the room that I've been hiding in. Now I take the easy way, yeah, that gets harder every day, but I ain't here to fix myself. I'm just trying to blind these eyes from hell. When you're tapped into that bit of vein, just about anything